Hello, everybody. This is CBR Hawk One, aka Granite Hope, aka God is Good from Twitter, bringing you another episode of The Big Shocker. Today, we're going to be looking at the data pertaining to when the so-called switch of the Democratic and Republican parties happened. Now, this is a little bit of a nuanced debate, but you hear this quoted all the time, saying that in the 1970s, with Nixon's Southern strategy, the Democrats of the South became Republicans. And there's a couple quotes that they'll use, but we're not looking at quotes, as you can tell, because my channel is about data, figures, statistics. So we're going to look at something specific here, and the reason why we're going to look at this is because I think this is absolutely telling of what really happened after 1970. Now, this data is compiled from Google public data relating to U.S. population. Um, Basically, you just type in the population of a place, click expand more. I'll show you how I get to it. I'm not absolutely sure if there's a better way, but this is the idiot's way to get to it. So let's look up something, say Alabama population. It'll pull up this little chart right here. But see, we're not really interested in that. You click explore more, and you get to this neat little graph that I have here. We'll close that one out because this is what we're looking at here. And see, this is going to tell the true story because all these have very similar features. And you're going to see that the next set of graphs I show you also have similar features. So here's the argument, and this data supports it. Basically, what happened in the 1970s was you had the EPA and FDA start to dominate, as well as various regulations. It was Nixon's whole push for regulation, war on drugs, all that. So, what happened, and I'm from Toledo, Ohio, keep in mind, that is just south of Detroit. It's like an hour's drive down, it's not far, and it's a microcosm of Detroit. So, really, what happened was following the collapse of manufacturing due to liberal regulations, the manufacturers all left the country. A lot of them did. Some of them went to Mexico, but the few that remained went south. And see, what happened is that the people from the northern Midwest and even a lot of your New England states, they started migrating south, and they moved to states like Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, um, not so much Mississippi. I believe Louisiana. We're going to check that. Um, but okay, now the question is, does the data support this? Now looking at these are the graphs of all the northern slash Midwest states. Basically anything north of the Mason-Dixon line, but west of the Great, or east, excuse me, of the Great Plains. We're not looking at the West. We're not looking at the Great Plains. We're specifically talking about Midwest, the New England, and the South, because you'll see these similar features. You even see them a little bit in Texas, but I'm not even going to count Texas because Texas is it's kind of a crossroads between the West, the South, and the South. So okay, so we're going to look at these. Now you see you get these dips. Um, like previous to 1945, this was the Second World War. There's a lot of people that went. Um, some areas they're more significant dips than others, like Connecticut. You see a flat, but you don't really see a dip. And then New York up here, you see a really, really big dip, which kind of tells you a lot of people from New York went to fight in the war in the Pacific and against Germany. Um, and then after that, you get an acceleration, in all these cases, from the post-war economic boom, when the economy was absolutely doing splendidly. And then right around 1972, you see it almost happen at the same time. Like here, 1971, 1971 in Pennsylvania, slightly later in Illinois, but 1972, July 1972, what I'm looking at. Ohio, July 1971. Um, Michigan, it's kind of more of a gradual flattening, but um, still around the 1970s and even the mid 60s, because it started in Detroit a little bit earlier, but that was still when the hippie environmental nonsense is going on. Um, and then you see Massachusetts, and July 1972, and July 1971 in Connecticut. So, virtually at the same time in the 1970s, you see a flattening of population. As you can see, some states were able to recover better than others. Illinois recovered from their flattening. Like states like Ohio never recovered. Um, it's not a state I'm proud to be from. Like in the 90s, you see New York kind of recovered. But anyhow, the point is, after 1970, all these states in the North and Midwest that relied very heavily on manufacturing, they all went downhill. Now, let's look at the South. We're going to clear these up. Oh, I guess that doesn't clear them. Okay, I'll just do this manually then. Alright, clicked on the wrong one. Don't want Minnesota, Ohio, or Pennsylvania. Okay, so now we're going to check out the South. We're going to see the story there. And you'll probably see a lot of this unfold. Um, Arkansas, it's debatable whether it's the South. I guess we'll click it just for information purposes. And you even kind of see it there too. Okay, so we get Arkansas. I don't count Florida. Florida's in a world of its own, pretty much. It's not really a redneck state. There's a lot of urban Democrat nonsense down there. Kentucky, we don't consider. That's it's a borderline. Some people consider it part of the South. Some people consider it South and North, but we're not going to include that one. We'll include Louisiana, Missouri. We're not including. That's a battleground. We're not looking at North Carolina. Am I missing anyone? We got Mississippi. Got to include that. South Carolina, Tennessee. Not including Texas. Not really going to include Virginia, because Virginia is like an iffy type of deal. West Virginia's got values similar to the South, but they're not the South. We're looking mostly at geography here, because that's a lot to do with it, or it's fundamental to the living styles. Let's see if we're forgetting anybody. I've actually included more than what I was planning on doing here, but okay, let's double check this. Let's see, not that, not Texas, not South Dakota, Rhode Island. Let's see. Well, okay, I won't keep you guys waiting because we got the information we want. Um, as you can see, they got the little dips after 1945 here, but the populations weren't significant, so a lot smaller of dips. Plus, you had a lot of people in the South. They were working for the war effort, so you don't see these big post-economic booms here. But now let's take note of what we see after 1970, the early 1970s, and see where the population goes. Now remember, what we just looked at from the north are populations that were flatlining, or in some cases went into steep decline, a la New York. As you can see for the South, you get the opposite. Look at this. Compare before this dot to after it. Very large acceleration. Like North Carolina, 5.08 million. Today, its population is 9 million, or almost 10 million, so that's nearly a doubling. Let's look at Georgia. Georgia, 4.6 million. Georgia now, 10.09 million, more than a doubling of population. Let's look at Tennessee, 3.9 million to 6.54 million, another almost doubling. Let's look at Alabama or Louisiana. Louisiana, it's kind of an odd thing because a lot of theirs is like immigration. So you kind of see a strange decline here. I'm not positive what that is. I just wanted to include it just to do the controversy, but you don't really see, admittedly, the acceleration. It's almost as if they were unaffected. But I just figured I'd try, because I don't think I looked at Louisiana. But I just figured try it out. Alabama, same deal, not dramatic, but you got 3.4 billion compared to 4.8. Decent increase. But more importantly, note that it doesn't flatline, such as the states of the North. Um, South Carolina, 2.59 million to, see if we can get it on here. Well, we'll just, okay, we'll put it right here. 4.8 million. 2.9 to 4.8. Very significant increase. And as you can see, this has the trademark bend. Now, yeah, that's pretty much, just think of these as bends because that's what they are. Mississippi, like I said, it's a smaller state and it's part of the South undeniably, but you even see a little bit of a bend there because prior to 1970 it was flatlined. And Arkansas, same thing. Their rise in population happened well after 1970, even after flatlining and declining. So here's the point we're making, and it's relatively simple and academic. Republicans moved down south from the north as a response to liberal policies in order to find jobs and go where they could keep more of their money. So here's the thing, and I'm going to hit you with something that we might expand upon a little bit. I might even do this for my next episode, in fact. Hint, hint. LBJ's War on Poverty, 1964, he stated he wanted poverty to be almost nothing. Poverty in 1964 was at about 15%, maybe slightly more than 15%. In 1965, it's 15%. If you look at the data, which we're going to look at together, in 2015, 50 years later, you know what poverty is? After all the entitlement programs, all the tax increases, all this, we're going to rob the rich blind logic. You know what poverty is? 15%. Poverty in 50 years, despite more and more going on entitlements in our discretionary budget. Well, that's actually a mandatory budget. But 50 years, poverty has gone down 0%, but yet the places that are getting heavily regulated are losing jobs, a lot to the south and a lot to Mexico and India and China. So you got to make a decision here whether you want this as your future or you want the other. flatline, hopelessness, high crime, murder rate in Illinois and Detroit and surrounding metro areas? Do you want that to be your future? Or do you want this to be your future, which was the Democrat present? Keep in mind, before 1970, the South was mostly Democrat. After 1970, that changed. The results are right here. Thanks for listening.